Yeah, we have an allergy, but not taking that poisonous food, the processed food, and all this junky food. We first is something in mind. We want clean, healthy things. Again, I bring an orange up here, an apple. I eat whole food, plant based, but I'm always saying that I don't want to tell anybody, what type of food they should eat in their mind. But I am saying this, that definitely, the problem is what we put on the food. And I had the potato here, and then of course the water. This is God's gift here. This alone, you know how many calories people a week or a day have with drinks? Also, they have that poisonous diet soda. You do realize what processed food does? If you're taking diet soda with these synthetic sugars, they ruin the palate. They go into the brain. Also, the chemicals in diet soda or these different low-calorie type crazy concoctions also hits the hypothalamus, the other chemicals. Because the scientists and the people sit there all day long. The psychologists, too, to figure this out. $1 billion they spend a day bringing people in, trying to figure out what's going to get them addicted. You want to be a slave to that, or you want to be with God's gift? So get centered. We get centered, and it's the answer to all our problems. All meaning all. Food addiction, people addiction. But it's also garbage and process. Our system and our palate and our brain wasn't wired to eat all of this garbage. Again, it's like an addiction, and you want to be a slave to the corporations. We don't have to be a slave to the corporations. We don't have to be a slave to people in life. We don't have to get people to want to like us. There's the problem. Resentment is towards people. It's the number one offender. So the whole process is, and she asked again, what was a connection here? It's all a direct connection to the food, and the food is directly connected to everything else in our life. Being free of these compulsions, and the ego is the center, right? It says on page 62, selfishness, self-centeredness. You want to lose all these compulsions, get out of the self. All of these things, even our own death, it's related to the self. When we lose the self, then we really find the universe and everything around us. Because what happens is we're blocking out what's called the sunlight of spirit. It says it in this page 68 also. The sunlight of spirit. What's the sunlight of spirit? Being centered, being one with everything. We were meant to be that way. When we wake up in self-centered fear, if right now, if you're in, like Bill says, in the quicksand, right, or the bedevilments, the frustration, the fear, whatever it is, it's because of, guess what, you're thinking about. During the day, when I'm upset, I'm thinking of self. When it's related to my addictions, I'm thinking of the self. The self is a figment of our imagination. It's an illusion. It really is. Because when you look at the immense of the universe and everything around us, it's very finite. It's self-centered fear. It's a bunch of chemicals going around in your brain telling you you're important. You could be the center of the universe. You could be free of this right now. We can be, the way of strength, spirituality. It's a way out of the self. Why do billions of people in the world? And when people who are here, want to realize that these steps, a lot of people say, well, it might be a cult, right? These 12-step programs. But these steps encompass, and if you read the first 164 pages of the big book, all the philosophies and religions of the world. You want to get out of self. You want to have a new way, a new perception. Life is what we perceive it. When you perceive things differently, life changes. When you surrender, the world surrenders to you. It's all about the thinking. When you praise other people and see the love and the compassion for them, you'll get the same respect. You'll receive it 10 times back. But we're in a self-centered fear. It's self-centered fear to worry about if somebody's pushing your buttons or whatever happens. Same with, it's all addiction. It's all related. It's all a consequence of the ego, which we didn't have, but we developed it. God gave us this gift of having this higher intellect, but we decided to use it for what people say, right? Say to us. Remember as a kid they would say sticks and stones would break my bones, but names will never harm me? Well, think about that. But we let everything around us harm us. People say, think, or do, or they gossip about us. People who are hurt people. All of these things are related. It says it right here. Resentment is the number one problem, we just read, of the Alcoholics Anonymous big book. Because it leads to all kinds of death, illness, and destruction. Because from that becomes our illnesses and our craving to get out of the self through making other things our higher power. Instead of the real truth within, we go for the falseness of the low-hanging fruit, material things. It could be money, success, food, anything, praise from people, right? That's a big one. Because when we don't get it, we're upset. So we're like a puppet on a string. And, on page, I think it's page 64. Yeah, page 66, actually. If you read near the bottom of the page there, it says, we began, this is really important, to see the world and its people really dominate us. In that state of wrongdoings of others, fancy to real, had the power to actually kill. And before that it says the futility and fatality of resentment, the insanity of alcohol, food addiction, or any kind of addiction returns, and we drink again, and for us to drink is to die. For us, with our eating is dying. Everybody around us is illnesses. It's amazing what this devastation is doing. So we had to know the truth from the false. There's only one solution, a spiritual solution. Not making food our higher power, drugs or people our higher power. People will fail us all the time. On page 99 it says, if you like the video and want to spread the message, press the like and subscribe button. Thank you. In working with others, on the very, very bottom of page 99 it says, remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people, it's dependent upon his relationship with God or higher consciousness, higher power. If we depend on people, we'll be back into our addictions, into those defects. Also going along with defects of guilt, shame, and remorse, the ego is telling us, look what you did yesterday. You resisted this food, you have this illness, compulsion. You know, I started to realize in our lives, it's not so much the compulsions we have, it's the fear of the compulsions. They have all kinds of diseases they label now, and what they do is they say, well, you might have an inability to have attention towards something, being able to focus, right? So I started to realize in my life, a lot of times I look at my watch, look what time it is, and I forget what the watch said. I mean, all kinds of things that distract me. But we could be glorious in our problems, or we could have fear of them. What I mean by that is that if somebody told me that I have a real problem with something in my life, guess what? I'll focus in on, think about it. Same thing with our addictions. We focus on as a thing that becomes our higher power, the thing we think about. Again, the phrase I love is we're either in the problem or we're in the solution. The solution is a spiritual program, a spiritual solution. And on page 100, this is what amazes me. I was in the program for a few years, and I know other people have been in the program 10, 20, 30 years. We have a solution here. But when I hear them, sometimes they're what's called in the problem. When you're in the problem, you're making the problem real. Look, my mother-in-law said this, my children or my wife or whatever it is in your life, your parents. You're actually saying it's a real problem. I started to realize the answer to all my problems was I had no problems. So here it says on page 100, what does it say here? It's telling us, and after somebody's been in 10, 20, 30 more years, are they practicing this? Because it's telling us in the first paragraph, both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. It says it all right there. It's not saying any other way to handle it. It's not saying analyze it, trying to figure it all out. It's saying, when we look back, we realize that things that came to us when we put ourselves in God's hand were better than anything we could have planned. And again, a way of strength. The way of strength used to be through my ego. God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Again, to our addiction. Planning the food or planning this, planning that. Follow the dictates of a higher power when you presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. You could be in the best of circumstances, a person could be upset. You could be in the worst of circumstances and be happy. Bill started to realize, at the end of Bill's story, said he wanted to be a famous golfer. He wanted to be a big financial analyst, his ego, right? And he got into his drugs and alcohol, just like addiction, whatever it could be, food, whatever. But he said at the very end of the chapter, he says in Bill's story, here we sit at our Utopia at our little kitchen table. We can experience Utopia right here, right now, when we get out of the self, and we have a way of strength. The way, trying to figure it out. I used to sit here and be in self-centered fear. If I do this today, if I do that, if I tell this person off, that's self-centered fear. It just never worked. And you got to ask this question: how's that working out for you? So, and I love this. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you'll presently live in a new and wonderful world. What more can you ask for? This whole program, let me just end with this, and then we want to hear from the amazing shares from everybody else. But on page 417, it says, the very last sentence in the acceptance paragraph, it says, I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world and what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. Change your perception, your attitude. My perception is, when I was into the addiction, was the corporations told me. The big lie. My perception was in life, my parents and people, teachers in school said I'd be better academically, sports, or, when you grew up, you see the movie stars, you had to, so you're trying to figured out, and that was my perception of life. That related to the self-centered fear. When we let go, our mind knows a perfect thermostat is in our hypothalamus, what to eat, what not to eat. Also, people talk about the allergy of the body. Yeah, we do what you call the allergy of the body when we eat certain what they call alcoholic foods or drink alcohol, take drugs. But it says on page 23, that would become academic, meaning not even important. It says that on page 23. If you want to go to page 23, and I'll end with this. Oh, here we go. Okay, I went right to it. That was it. Therefore, the main problem, the alcoholic, we could say the compulsive eater, centers in the mind rather than the body. It says in the first sentence on that paragraph on page 23, these observations would be academic and pointless if our friends never took the first drink.